All right, welcome back. This morning the students were asking me, they said, "How was your summer?" And I just laughed. I said I was here all summer, so I took 1 week of vacation. All right, hopefully you all know what class this is. This is .NET Framework with Web Databases, AWD1111. It's ASP.NET class. The important question, let's get that out of the way first. Yes, there are no classes next Monday, all right, for Labor Day, so don't come. This is good. I only have one person from the list missing because this morning I only have 5 new students and only 3 came. So that was not a great start. I was not real pleased. All right. The information hasn't changed. We're going to be in this room this semester. We're going to be in this room next semester. All right. And it's funny because I don't know how you feel about it. This room always feels warmer in here to me than that room did. And I already had a student this morning. She had a hoodie on and she still told me she was freezing. All right. All right. When we look at here on the program level outcomes, really it's, I guess, the last 3. We are going to be using Git, and we're going to be using it a little different than you have before. All right. Yeah, create data-driven or database-driven web-based applications. We're going to start doing that almost right away. And just like we had last semester with the C#, utilize object-oriented programming principles and fundamentals. The book, I don't have it with me right now, but I will tell you that if you do Google it, you can find a PDF copy online. I'm not supposed to say stuff like that, but I did buy one. It's in the other room. All right. And there's really, I don't think, going to be enough time to go over 27 chapters in 18 weeks or 16 weeks, I should say. So no, we're not going to hit every chapter. We are for sure going to go through the first 14 chapters. All right. After that, it's going to be, we're going to hit some of them. We're not going to hit other ones. As always, if you go out to my YouTube channel and you go to the playlist, I already have a couple hundred videos out there for this class. I've gone through the whole book. I've done the project that's in here in chapters 7 through 13. And I believe they give you the source code for the project with the book, and I don't think the source code works. I don't know. I never even opened it, other than I tried running it just for the heck of it. It didn't work, at least on mine. It didn't. So again, we're going to be going through all these. The way the class will be done, too, just so you know, we'll go over a chapter or two, and virtually every chapter that we go over, there will be a written test for. Now, they'll be different from last semester because Chris Hardy hates written tests. All right. So the way we're going to do written tests this semester is I'm going to give you the written test at the beginning of the period. They won't be like multiple choice or anything like that. All right. They'll be just short answer types of questions. The test will be due at the end of the period. Does that make sense to everyone? And it'll be open book and open notes. I want you to do really well on these tests. All right. And every few chapters or so, as we did last semester, we'll have a hands-on test. All right. And before we even get into this, we're going to be going through a few examples, and there's a few things that I want to talk to you about also. Just ask out of curiosity, and all I'm asking here is that people be honest, because I had emailed you about this and I told you about it last semester. How many people have upgraded to Visual Studio 2019? Well, that's probably better than I thought, so that's 3 out of 11. So, all right. But I'm expecting that we're all going to be using Visual Studio 2019. All right. The uninstall is not difficult. You can go out to, you can go out here, you can go out to Control Panel. All right, you don't have to do this right now, of course, but you go out to Control Panel, find your programs and features, look in here. It should be alphabetized. Go down and find Visual Studio Community. Year is, of course, 2017. Right mouse click on it and choose uninstall. All right. And then just like we did last semester, you will go out to do a regular install. All right. Now, if I did that too fast, or if you're like, I'm confused or whatever, again, I did about a 20-minute video where on this machine right here at the end of last semester, I uninstalled Visual Studio 2017 and I installed Visual Studio 2019. All right, so if you're interested in that, you can go take a look at that as well. The course description, like I said, just boiling it down, the idea is we want to be able to create database-driven websites that use C# along with the ASP.NET web framework. All right. The outcomes, I'll let you read those yourselves. Okay. And again, it's interesting, and I blame myself. Actually, I don't blame anybody, but Thursday of last week, we had our in-service. And I talked with Paul Smith, who is teaching this class over at the St. Louis campus. And Paul and I have very different philosophies on things. He's right about a year or two out of business. He knows a lot of stuff I don't know. And I would never deny that. All right, I think he's just a really, really brilliant guy. But his philosophy on things, on a lot of things, are different than mine are. And what I mean is, he's planning on finishing the book in like 3 weeks. The whole book. And the project that we're doing, chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, he's doing that in a week and a half. I don't think it's possible to do that, but he said, no, it's not going to be a problem. You're not take him at his word. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is, again, we're doing it differently. So if you know anybody at the St. Louis campus, they're going to be, we're hopefully learning the same stuff, but the focus will be a little bit different. All right. This morning, it's funny because about 3 weeks ago, I got to go to a pre-student orientation, which lasted 2 hours. All right, and this morning I got to go to basically the same thing, but given by somebody else for an hour and a half. Am I right in assuming that we all understand, like, the attendance policy? That hasn't changed. You get a total of 6 absences. All right. If for some reason something happens, you get sick or whatever, and you are kicked out of class, so to speak, you can fight that. All right. I mean, we had a situation, there's some people who are not back, and not all of them, but some of them who are not back because they exceeded the attendance policy. Also, if because you knew him, you got to know him a little bit last semester, James Murphy has moved out of state. So he was going to be in the other class, but because he's out of state, he is not now. All right. The academic honesty, it was interesting this morning because Shannon Bruggeman was showing a bunch of slides on this stuff, and it said in there that if you help another student with homework, that's considered plagiarism and that you'll get a 0. What it said on the slide and the way it is was totally, they were different things. Again, if I'm helping John over there, all right, and Devin has a question and Luke wants to sit there and help him, that's not cheating. All right, that's not a problem whatsoever. I don't have any kind of problem with that. Now on a test, yes. All right. The grade scale has not changed, so I don't think there's anything really to say, hopefully, other than or about that. Any questions that you have are supposed to go to Inside Rankin. Any general college questions you have, you're supposed to go to the other building and talk to, first, if you can, to Patrick Glynn. And if Patrick isn't in, you talk to Brandon Fan. Okay. Has everybody done this? And if you haven't, if you do go out to your InsideRankin.org and you go out to Student Services over here. What Student Services? Maybe it's not. No, it's notifications. I'm sorry. You go out to notifications. You should all sign up for the emergency system. Where you're supposed to do that every year. So even if you did it last year, it may have expired. All right. As always, though, unless you're told otherwise, you are to assume that classes are to be held. Any questions on any of that stuff? Yeah, I think it's pretty basic, hopefully. All right. then let's look. I'm not going to go through all 80 days. That would be ridiculous. All right. But what I am going to do right now, because it's not very long, is I am going to actually go over chapter 1 of the book. And then after we get done, I'm going to tell you exactly when you walk in here tomorrow what will be on the test, the written test for chapter 1. All right. Literally, this is the way that it will be done. All right. So we'll do that. And then I want to go over to this site that's called DotNetOdyessy. And we're going to take a look at, they've got a free course on there that's called Asp.NET MVC5. We're going to actually go through the entire course. Now, there is some stuff from there I've already got available for you. And I just haven't gone out and gone on to what's called Github Classroom to put it out there for you. I'll try to do that tonight so you'll have that available to you tomorrow morning. But we're going to spend most of the rest of the week on that and also going over chapter 2. Before we go over chapter 2, which builds an actual working real-life Asp.NET MVC5 application, albeit kind of a simplistic one, we're going to go back and we're going to do a review of Bootstrap. Now this summer, beginning of July, I went over to the St. Louis campus, and along with Evan Gudmested, we taught web design to middle school kids. Okay, and Evan went and wrote this thing, and he put it into Bootstrap, and he did a nice job with it. He did it the first week, and then we came back here the second week, and basically I replicated it, and I did that. We're going to take that we spent a week on with the students, and we're going to spend one day on it here. And we're going to do that. Why? Because it's going to be expected that as you go through the 1, 2, or 3 projects, probably 2 or 3 projects that we'll have in here, that you will be using Bootstrap, that they will look professional. All right. Now, that said, the project that they do in the book, they use Bootstrap, but not nearly as much as they could. All right. And the one that we're going to do, we're going to actually do one in here from scratch. We're going to bootstrap that thing from the beginning. All right. So that'll get us through this, this week, and then, you see we're next week. I'm going to do the best I can to try to stick to this schedule. All right. Last semester, last year, I didn't do a good job of when you got into class saying, okay, today is day 2, we're going to be doing this. All right. And there were a lot of times, we needed more time to spend on a topic, or we got ahead, or whatever. And I know, for example, like Mr. Knott, who teaches in this classroom after I do, he teaches the hardware class, one of the hardware classes. Anytime he changes anything, he immediately updates the syllabus. All right. And I mean, I give him a lot of credit for that. I just don't have the time to do it. All right. So, like I said, I'll show you this. I this morning should have already done this, but I didn't. So I will send everybody this URL. But this is, again, as you can see, I've got 191 videos that are in there right now. All right. The first video, as mentioned, I guess it's 15 minutes. I thought it was 20. Literally, I uninstall the Community Edition of 2017 and install the Community Edition of 2019. All right. I found this series of articles online that were called The History of ASP.NET. So I did 3 little presentations on those for parts 1, 2, and 3. Found this online also. I thought this was interesting. They had, it was from C# Corner, and it was called ASP.NET Interview Questions, and there must be over 100 of them. So I made that into a series also of about 5 different things. I'm not going to go through any of those. When we get to the point in a week or 2 where we start talking databases again in more depth, we are going to go through an example of creating a project, doing it both entity framework, with doing it code first, which means we write the code, and then we have the system automatically create the database for us. And we'll go through another example that does it the other way. We'll create the database. All right. All right. Now, what I'm going to do then, since a lot of you have not yet installed 2019, I'm going to run this, and I want to show you a few things because it looks different in 2019. Visual Studio looks different in 2019 than it did in 2017. All right, so come in here, and I'm just going to show you. I mean, even the start screen here is different, but this is different. All right, and if you go to create a new project, now mine looks different because I've already created a bunch of these. All right, but when you look over here, there's a heck of a lot more choices than you had previously. All right, and if you say to me, well, can I get through this entire course and just use 2017? You probably could, but one of the things we're supposed to be doing in here is showing you the latest and greatest. That's why I'd appreciate it if you would uninstall 2017 and install 2019. All right. In fact, I'm going to have a list of stuff that I want you to do. We're going to go over that in just a few minutes. But if you start going through this and you go down, I don't know how far this is, maybe 15, 20% of the way down, you'll notice that there is ASP.NET Web Application .NET Framework. All right. That's what we're going to choose for virtually everything we do in here. All right. I'm not going to do anything with console. In fact, in one of the exercises that we're going to go through, they do a console thing. You can do that on your own if you want. I'm not going to. All right. But I just want to show you this. Okay. You don't have to write this down or anything else. But I want to show you the difference between doing some of this stuff that we're going to be working on this semester. So I'm just going to click right here. All right, and I'll click Next. And of course it says where you want to keep it. Okay, and I'm going to call this empty project. And again, I'm not even going to save this, so it's not like you have to do this or anything. If you just want to watch, that's totally fine. I want to save this to the desktop, and that should change. It did. Okay, by default, you should know this by now. The project name and the solution name are identical. They don't have to be. All right. In fact, when we create the project that starts in Chapter 7 of the book, we're going to actually have one solution with 3 projects in it. All right. So I'm just going to, for now, I'll just leave it that name. That's fine. But what I want to show you is when you click here and you click Create, this is maybe the most important page that you'll see in here. The author of the book that we are using, virtually starts everything by clicking empty and then clicking MVC. What that means is you get what's known as a skeletal framework. It'll start setting some stuff up for you. But the majority of stuff that's in there, you have to add it yourselves. All right. On the other hand, if instead of choosing empty, you choose MVC, this is automatically checked, and it builds a lot of stuff. It uses what's called ASP.NET scaffolding, and it builds a boatload of stuff for you. So what I want to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to build 2 projects, and I want to show you the difference between them. All right. So for now, I'm going to just choose empty. All right, and make sure MVC is chosen. If I didn't click anything in here, it would literally be just about an empty project. All right, this won't be totally empty, but this is what I want to show you. All right, we shouldn't have to worry about any of the stuff, the advanced options that are in here. Okay, and we'll talk about authentication, just not right now. So I'm going to click Create. Again, this is the empty project, hence the name. When you do this, if you look up on the screen here, and this is just garbage right here, but okay, this is what you get. All right. Now, if you remember, the name of the book for this class is Pro ASP.NET MVC5. MVC is an acronym. It stands for Model View Controller. The reason I'm telling you that is if you look up in your Solution Explorer here, notice that among other things, we've got 3 folders. One called Models, one called Views, and one called Controllers. What you should also see is if you take a look in here, this Views folder has a file in it that's called webconfig. Don't worry about that right now. But virtually all 3 of these are empty. That means that when you want to create your own models, you have to do it yourselves. And all a model is it's a class. All right, so if I wanted to create a new model in here, I'd right mouse click on here. Under Models, choose Add, choose Class, give it a name. That's all I've got to do. All right. If I want to come in and create a controller, I right mouse click, I choose Add, and I choose Controller. This is another thing I want to show you here. The author of our book almost all the time here chooses MVC5 controller empty, which again means that you get an empty controller, all right, with very little, almost nothing in it. But if you choose, for example, this MVC5 controller with views using Entity Framework, it goes in and it creates a bunch of stuff for you for create, read, update, and delete, or CRUD operations that we talked about a little bit last semester. All right. So just to show you the difference between these, if I come through here and I choose right there, I click on empty. All right, I'm going to move that over. So you can see there's nothing right now in any of these. And just in that views, there's another web config file. But I'm going to click on empty. I'm going to click add. And this is just going to be a dummy controller. Notice when you do this, because you're going to be creating a lot of these this semester, always keep the name controller at the end. The system is looking for controller files or controller folders files to end with the name controller. All right. So I'm going to just call this one dummy. Okay. But what I want you to see is once I click the add button, what's going to happen here is it's going to go in and it's going to create under controllers, it's going to create a file. All right, a dummy controller.cs file, and under my views, it's going to create a folder with nothing in it that's called dummy. All right, so notice when I click this, there's my dummy controller.cs file, there's my dummy folder, and there's nothing in it. So when you create an empty controller like that, you get a file, it's got a little bit of stuff in it. All right, that's it. Don't worry about what this is right now. We're going to talk about all this stuff. All right, but I just want to show you the difference that if I were to come in here and say add controller, and this time I'm going to choose MVC5 controller with views using Entity Framework, and I'm going to come in here for the model class. I don't even know. I don't have anything. All right. They should still work. I hope it still does. And there's nothing in there either. Well, it's just giving me canceled here. I'm trying to figure out why. There should be no reason I can't do this. What we are going to end up doing is we're going to build the whole project doing it the first way. Then we're going to build our own project. You may or may not remember from last semester, and I realize not all of you were here for that, but last semester when we did some work with that database, we looked at that sales order database. You may or may not remember that. We're going to use that sales order example database. We're going to build our own. What that is it's a bike shop, so we're going to build our own database-driven bike website for a bicycle shop. A mythical bike shop. All right, that's what we're going to do. And when we do that, we're going to end up, just to make it easier, just to show you all this, we're going to choose those. What would happen, I guess there's more stuff I have to choose here. I didn't realize that. But what would happen then is in here, I'd have my controller file. In here, I would have a folder with the same name as the controller, but there'd be about 5 files in there. There would be an index.cshtml, a details.cshtml, a create.cshtml, delete.cshtml, and an edit.cshtml. All right, so there'd be a bunch of stuff that would get created for us that otherwise we'd have to create ourselves. The advantage of creating it ourselves is we can put anything in there we want. All right. The disadvantage is it's more work. The advantage of having the system created for us is it writes a lot of the code for us. The disadvantage is it may not be the code we want. And if that doesn't make sense, I really and truly think it will as we get going. All right. All right. So if we look at this stuff or start to look at this stuff, what I want you to realize, again, MVC, Model View Controller. Basically, what the model, the M in there represents, usually is what's called a data store. Typically, a data store is a database. Does that make sense? All right. What we're going to end up doing, and you'll see this because we're going to, again, do it both code first and database first. So I could go in and I could create 3 files. So I could come into models right here and I could create 3 files. I could call one customers, one products, and one orders. I could do that and set up a bunch of stuff for each one. Okay, then come in and just do a couple more things in here and do add, but instead of saying class, I'd come through here and do a new item. And again, I'd have to come in and choose data and ADO.NET data model, etc. But it would write a ton of code for me. All right. So you're going to see all that because that's what we're going to be doing in here. We're going to be doing it, like I said, both ways. I want you to understand writing the code first and having the code create the database for you. And I want you to understand writing the database first and have the database write the code for you. There's even a third way of doing it because when you do this, it also creates something called a designer. You can start with an empty designer and use a designer and have the designer write the code and the database for you. I find that really confusing, so I'm not going to show you that one. All right, at least not in any depth or breadth of coverage. All right, so I can come in here and I can put literally in here whatever I want. All right. Now, did that show you a lot? No. But what I want you to do is I'm going to start up another Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to come back and just as I did before, I'm going to come in here and choose ASP.NET Web Framework here, but instead of calling it empty, I'm just going to call it full, which maybe is a stupid name, but it's fine. All right. And I'm going to click Create, but I want to show you the difference here. I'm going to choose MVC, which automatically chooses this, and I'm going to click Create. And I want you to look at the difference between the two. All right, now if you start taking a look in here, you'll notice right away when you look, there's a home controller. Okay, fine. There are, in here, there is a home folder, which has got an about, a contact, and an index, and there is also some other stuff in here. The other big thing is, just so you are aware of this, is I can run this. I couldn't run the other one that I created. All right, why? Because it doesn't have the requisite file or files that it needs to run. I'm going to try it. And I'm thinking it's going to error out. I want to show you that. This looks a little weird, rather. What the system does is it's using your machine as both a client and a server. So your machine is going to be used for both. And what it does is it picks out a random port. All right. So when Chris runs his, the chance of his localhost being 44342 are almost none. Okay. So right out of the box, you get this. And it's not much, but you'll notice it's got a home page, which is here. It's got an about page with virtually nothing in it. It's got a contact page with virtually nothing in it. But the point is, you've got that stuff made. Now, if I go back to the other project, here, which was the one that was called empty, okay, and I try to run it, I'm going to get an error message. And I'm going to get an error message because it doesn't have a view file that it can run that's got the information that I want in it. All right, so it'll come up in a second. There you go. It just says resource not found. All right, in other words, it doesn't have enough stuff to do anything, is what I'm trying to tell you. All right, so when we start on the project that the author has in the book, all right, when we start working on it, you run it, it's not going to do much for quite a while. That's okay. Don't let that bother you, worry you one way or the other. All right. And again, the reason that the other project, the other one that the other one ran, I'm going to stop the run, but the reason that it ran is it has an index.cs HTML file. All right. And do you notice we're used to index.html, correct? This is index.cs HTML. Anybody want to take a wild guess what kind of file that is? Sure. You're partway there. It is an HTML file that can contain C#. All right, that's what it is. In fact, if I bring that file up and I look at it, anytime you start something with an @ sign followed by a curly brace, you're starting a C# block inside of your HTML file. All right? And you can put it all on one line, you can put it on multiple lines. This could have been put on one line as well. And again, right now I'm not that concerned that you were, well, what is ViewBay? We're going to get into all that stuff. But you should be able to actually look at this and know, taking a look at it, that that's Bootstrap. You can see the Jumbotron in it, etc. All right, so that really isn't anything new. All right, and same kind of thing in here. MD, for medium-sized device, etc. All right, and you can go in and you can change any of this stuff. I mean, it should be pretty obvious. But what I want you to look at here is, if you look, I've got this index file, I've got a contact file, that's that other one that you saw, and I've got that about file. You saw that one as well. All right. I also got a special file in here that's under a shared folder that's called layout. And by default, unless you tell it otherwise, all of your web pages are going to share this default layout file. They don't have to. You can have none of them, one of them, up to all of them, whatever you want. But you may or may not have noticed, but a lot earlier when I ran this, over on the left-hand side in the nav bar, it said application name. All right. Okay, so I just put my name in there. I'm just going to save it, run it again. And this is not a gee whiz thing, but what I wanted to show you was, you see it there, but notice if I change, all of them are sharing this file. So if you want to have a common look and feel to your website, you can have all of them use that as your default file. All right. Now the project that we're doing, the one that's from the book, for whatever reason, he does almost nothing with Bootstrap. All right. In fact, let's see. I've got it here. I just have to remember where I put it. I'm hoping that's it. And when we get to this point, there's about, I don't know, somewhere around a dozen images. I'll give them all to you. I just grabbed my own for this. Again, like I said, this is what they have out of the book. I went through and did the project. And let's see if we go out card work. And I'm not going to lie to you. Is this the best project ever of all time? No. but it works okay, and it does a really good job of explaining a lot of things. So you can see he used basically nothing up here. He put the stuff down here. So I go, it's a sports store. So if I go over to chess and I say, oh, I want to buy a cap. Is that pretty obvious what happened right there? It put it into my shopping cart. You can see it right here also. All right, I can go over to soccer, and who doesn't want their own soccer stadium? All right, so I've got a soccer stadium in there now, etc. Okay, and when I get done, I can check out, and I can put all of my information in there. Probably have it already, I think. Now the way that this is set up, just so you know, okay, if I go and complete the order, right now it's not going anywhere. But it does grab all the information. It grabs everything that I've ordered. It'll automatically create an email for us, and it'll save it for us so we can see what we did. Does that make sense? If we wanted to actually go out, we'd have to either bring in like PayPal, and PayPal has actually a free thing that's called a sandbox that you can use, and we have to go and massage that in here. Are we going to do that? Boy, I'd love to if we get the time. I've worked on that a little bit in the past, but we'll see how it goes. All right. But like I said, so this is the project, and I'm not saying, like I said, that it's all that great or all that terrible, but it's got some very nice features, some very nice functionality that's in it. All right. Including things like it keeps at, I can remove things from my cart. I can continue shopping, which shows me all the stuff that I've got in here for soccer. You may or may not have noticed here, but it's paginated. In other words, I've only got 3 soccer products, but if I had more, I could go to a second page. I think all of them have just 1 page worth of stuff. There's 2 water sports and about 3 chess things. 4. All right. So this is the thing that we're going to end up working on as a class. Now, there's things that are in this that I'm not sure whether or not they're over your head, but they're over my head. In fact, Paul and I had a fairly long discussion last week, and I said, what are you going to do with unit testing? And he kind of laughed, and he said, well, I tried doing unit testing last semester. I said, how did it go? And he laughed. All right, he said, not real well. So what we're going to do is when we get to unit testing, I'm going to explain to you what it is. I'm going to give you some documentation on what it is. We hopefully will do a simple project where we do it, but you won't be responsible for actually doing any unit testing. This whole class could just be on unit testing. And you'd learn that real well, but you wouldn't learn much of anything else. All right. So what I'd like everybody in here to do for right now is to just bring up your browser window and go out to DotNetOdyessy.com. And if you're not a good speller, it's right up on the screen, but do not put any blank spaces in it. And it's totally case insensitive. All right. Hopefully yours will look like this. It may not be exactly the same, but it should be. And if you click over here on the little hamburger menu that's right there, you'll notice that one of the things it has there is ASP.NET MVC free course. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this free course. All right. Now, we're going to start it today. We may finish it tomorrow. If we don't finish it tomorrow, we'll probably finish it on Wednesday. So if you say, well, when am I supposed to convert over to 2019? When you can. All right. Now, when you look at this, there's 12 parts to this tutorial. And what happens is, if you do sign up on there, you don't have to. But if you do, they send you the source code for each one. I've already got that for you. All right. What Evan and Paul decided to do this year, okay, Am I right in assuming, Grace, everybody in here has a Git account? You've all downloaded Git. All right? We're not going to use Bitbucket anymore. Rather, we're going to go into github.com and you're going to create a GitHub account. Not only that, there is a thing that's called Github Classroom. How do I know about it? Because Evan, as we were talking on Thursday of last week, he's, hey, did I ever tell you that we decided to go to Github Classroom starting this semester? And I said, no, but wish I would have heard that a few weeks ago. But so he gave me about a half an hour run through with it, okay? And what hopefully is going to happen is when you get tests, when you get assignments, when you get anything, you're going to go out to GitHub and you'll probably have some kind of a hyperlink from me. You click that and it'll give you access to the homework or access to whatever it is you're working on. Plus, you're going to be using GitHub as your repository for saving everything, okay? Now, when we get into working on these projects and we're working with databases, what I have found in the past is, yeah, you can have GitHub, you can save, you can do everything the way you're supposed to, but it doesn't work very well when databases get involved. So what may have to happen is, let's pretend for a second that you had a project that was due today. I might just walk up to every one of your computers and have you run it for me, or I might run it from your computer. Does that make sense to everybody? I just want to make sure that I can run it. What I don't want is 11 people to turn me in their homework and me not to be able to run any of them, because that's a waste, because then the next day I'd have to do the same thing anyway. I'd have to say, hey, bring your machine up, etc. All right? All right. So what I'm going to do is, Chapter 1 has no code, no nothing in it. I want to talk about Chapter 1, then we'll take a break. All right. So it says in this chapter, you'll learn about how the web works, etc., etc. Then we build our first. This is just almost a waste of time. This first thing, we'll talk about views and Razor. You don't know what Razor is, you're going to learn how to lay things out, how to create models, what the entity framework is. This is going to be a lot of review, CSS and Bootstrap. We're going to set up an application, do some data modeling, CRUD, validation, and updating and deleting. What my hope is when we finish with this, you will be going through it with me, and when we finish, I'll be able to say, okay, Devin, bring yours up. And you'll bring it up, I can run through it, look at a couple of different things, check it off, and you'll get X number of points. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to start at the beginning in Chapter 1. Now, don't let this picture scare you or anything else, plus it's replicated later on down. So I'm going to wait until it's replicated and we talk about it later on down. How the web works, ASP.NET, how MVC fits into this. One thing for you to understand. I've had this friendly argument with Paul and with Evan. We are teaching here, ASP.NET MVC5. I have no problem at all teaching that, especially considering I taught it a year ago. It makes it much easier for me to teach it now. But that is not the latest version that's out there. The latest version that's out there is ASP.NET MVC6, which is now called Core or Core.NET. So why aren't we teaching that? Because according to Paul and Evan, when they've gone out and they've talked to businesses in the area that are using ASP.NET, none of them have converted over from MVC5 yet. So that's the reason we're still using MVC5. So why am I even telling you that? Well, a year ago, we used a different book for this class. And to be honest with you, I just thought the book just sucked big time. All right? On a 1 to 10, this book is so much better. But on a 1 to 10, this book's about a 4. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be in this book that you're going to be like, I don't have a frickin' clue as to what he's talking about. So you ask, sometimes I'll be able to help you, sometimes I'll say, you're right, I don't have a frickin' clue either. All right, just so you know. Because, you know, this author does a much better job than the one last semester, but it still could be better. One of the reasons that I'm doing this kind of thing and going through it is so we can ease our way into this. All right? Okay. As it says, you can get all the parts of the tutorial right there. I don't want to sit and read to you. I don't. But am I right in assuming that that picture that's on the screen right there, I'm asking you this. Am I right in assuming that makes sense to everybody? You're at your browser, you type something in, you hit enter, you're sending an HTTP request. It's going to hit a server someplace. That server may be able to handle it itself, or that server may have to, pass that information on to other servers, but eventually that server is going to pass it back as an HTTP response. Yes? Anybody who doesn't get that? Because that's what they're talking about right here. All right? But when you work with an MVC application, as you can see from the top, there's a heck of a lot more to it than that. All right? There are two ways that this class could have been taught. We could teach it the way I did 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago, where we taught ASP.NET Web Forms. You may or may not have noticed, but when we started this stuff here, okay, let's just say I was going to add a new project here. All right, so where's my solution? Add new project. All right, now if I came through here, one of the ones that I can choose from here is an ASP.NET Web Form application. That's the way it used to be done. You probably would like that better than what we're doing because it's much more similar to the C# forms we did last semester. All right, so fine, then why aren't we using them? Because industry is not using them. They are using, by and large, a model view controller framework, which is why we're using them. All right. You all know what HTML is. You all know what CSS is. You all know what JavaScript is. All right, so let's jump down to here. All right. It's as it says here. We just saw that when the user requests a resource, the web server delivers the resource. Then why do we need web applications at all? As it says, what's the need for something like MVC? Why don't we just create these HTML files, let the user access them? The problem is that if you do it that way, you end up creating, it's like the difference between setting up an array and putting 100 people in it as opposed to having 100 different variables. It's that kind of an idea. All right? And that's what they talk about in here. Okay. And the other thing is dynamicity. We want to be able to have something that we're going to be able to go in and check and see if something is in a database. If it is, and somebody wants to buy it, we let them buy it. All right. If it's not in there, we tell them that kind of an idea. All right. The other thing that we get from this, or the other things, as they say in here, is we get security. Okay. This is one of the places where this is going to look a lot different when we start building these applications. 2019 is much different than 2017 as far as its look and feel. All right. Again, I'm asking because I don't know. Do people understand what the concept of caching is? All right. That basically what it is, for example, let's say that I go out to CNN.com. All right. And I've got it up on my screen. Okay. And I basically just shut it, I get out of it and I get right back into it. A lot of times what will happen is the system took a copy of what was in there and it saved it into memory for me, a special part of memory that's the cache. All right. And so what cache is it improves performance. The system will try to save things for you. Sometimes it'll try to guess as to what you need. Sometimes it'll go by past practices. But it's doing that to try to improve performance. So you get some caching. You also get, as it says, easier data access. All right. A lot of the work that we're going to be doing in here this semester will revolve around databases. All right. And if it turns out that we follow, if we do a good job of pretty much following what I have, if you've looked through the syllabus, you're going to have a lot of time in here that we're going to be working on a project All right, and you're going to have a lot of time to make that project look really, really professional. That's what I want. All right, so some of the stuff that's in here, Paul is probably spending a lot more time on. He's much more comfortable with Web API, using the Web Application Program Interface than I am. All right. So again, it used to be just this. Now you've got your choice. Most companies choose ASP.NET rather MVC. Why? Because it's more powerful. All right. And here they talk about how ASP.NET MVC works. Notice it says model, set of classes which defines your business domain. I called it the data store. All right. They're typically, not always, but most of the classes that you have in the models folder, right, most of those classes will represent database tables. All right. Then you've got your view. Well, the view are those .cs HTML files I started to show you, like the index.cs HTML. All right. They're the files that actually show you the user interface. All right. And then you've got the controller. The controller, in many ways, is kind of like a traffic cop. They make sure when stuff comes into the system, it gets routed and put to where it should go. All right, I'm keeping that real simple, but that's pretty much what it is. So this is pretty much the picture they had at the top. So you come in here and you type in a URL right there. That's you. You type that in and you hit enter. Once you hit enter, what happens in an ASP.NET MVC application is something called the routing engine says, okay, I just got this request. Where do I route it off to? And if you say, I don't get it, imagine that you had a web page and your home page, you could go to 5 other pages from it, maybe an about page, a contact, and a bunch of other stuff. All right. Then this routing engine would decide based on what you chose where you wanted to go. And that's what it's doing. All right. Then what happens is the controller figures out, okay, what model class or classes do I have to call? And you'll notice that under the model, the other thing it says in here are business rules. And that's how a place operates. All right. I had to check, and I had 2 people this morning that were on my list of not yet, whatever the heck that's called, able to come into class, that kind of an idea. Rankin has a business rule that says if you haven't paid by day 1 or made some other arrangements, you're not supposed to be able to come to class. That's a business rule. All right. You'll notice that the arrows go both ways. So the controller can ask for information from the model can send information back to the controller. Then the controller has to figure out, based on what it just got from the model, which view to call. So which .cs HTML file it should call. All right. And you'll notice that in both cases, the arrows go in both directions. But also, and this is important for you to at least look at the picture, there is never, ever, never should be any direct communication between the model and the view. In fact, the model and the view are pretty much agnostic of each other. They don't care about one another whatsoever. Now, can you write code that violates all these rules? Of course you can. You can write everything and just basically have a controller and stick it all in there. All right. You kind of saw when we were working in C# when we started to write bigger programs, the problems that you had when you put everything in main. You get the same kind of problems here. All right. So they explain these steps, and it's what I just told you. If you like what they say better, great. Then go with that. All right, and rather than going on right now, when we do our first ASP.NET MVC application, it's 1:33. Let's take a healthy break at 1:34. All right, let's come back at 1:50, please.